Good afternoon. Welcome along, everybody, to another Study Melbourne Career Catalyst webinar. I'm just going to give you guys a second to join on in as per usual. So come on into the session. I can see everyone joining now. And welcome back for 2023. We're ready to kick off into it after a big year last year and get pumping for a new year ahead, which is fantastic. Now, as per usual, guys, if you have any questions, thoughts, feelings throughout the session, you can jump on in and use the Q&A or the chat function, whichever works for you. And I will jump into those at the end of the session because we always have a lot to get through throughout these, and we can have a bit of a debrief at the end. I very well may cover things that you want to chat about as we go. So let's kick off. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Penny Holloway. I'm the head of marketing and communications here at InternMatch. InternMatch is lucky enough to be the delivery partner for the Study Melbourne Career Catalyst program. And today we're talking all things interviews, which is super exciting. But before we get into it, I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. So let's have a little look into what we're going to cover through today's session. We're coming into a really prime time in Australian job market. January, February, always really busy times as far as hiring, people leaving roles, starting new roles, looking for new opportunities. So it's a great time to talk about all things interviews. And we're going to go through a bunch of different things. I'm going to break it down to 3 separate sections for you today. Researching your company that you're applying for your role with. I have carried this over from a different presentation. That's naughty by me, and I'll fix it up at the end. Interview preparation, questions and answers that you're likely going to be asked. We're going to go through how you can answer these questions properly and in a great, easy way, presenting yourself on the day at your interview, and how to create a great, lasting impression once you leave that interview. So let's kick off, and I'll show you that 3 kind of part series we're going to go through. So I think a really nice way of breaking up interview sessions is that because there is so much involved in them, let's go by a 3-part series. Part 1 being pre-interview, all the things you need to do once you know you have an interview, but you're not quite there yet. Even if the interview is tomorrow, all the things you need to do before the session. Then we're going to talk about the key part, the actual day of the interview. What do you need to do in the morning? What do you need to remember during the interview? How do you make sure you turn up and you just rock and roll through that entire session? And then finally, how do you follow up? What are the things you're supposed to do post-interview? How do you get the most out of that situation? We're going to go through all of those 3 things today. So let's rock and roll and start with pre-interview. Pre-interview is probably one of the biggest, most important parts of your interview session, right? Most of the work you're going to do and the work that's going to pay off is what you're going to do actually before you even get to your interview. But let's just kind of step back a little bit and think about interviews as a whole first. I want you to remember throughout this entire session that a job interview is all about making a great impression. This is everything from the answers that you provide to the questions they ask, what you're wearing, how you present yourself, the use of your hands in your interview, your body language, whether it's in person, whether it's on Zoom, it doesn't really matter. All those things contribute. Every little bit contributes to how someone perceives you in that interview and the impression that you leave. So in that first part of an interview, you're starting to build the foundations, the building blocks that create this impression. And we're going to put you in a great place to make sure that you do kick off on the right foot. So there's a few things you need to do in this pre-interview stage. And you can start doing this sort of stuff now, even if you're not applying for roles. This is the sort of things you should be kind of making your day-to-day, practicing, spending time on, so that if you apply for a job today, and you get an interview in 2 days' time, that you already are ready to go. Preparation makes perfection. Researching your personal pitch and how you actually answer those interview questions. So first things first, researching a role. If you fail to plan, then you pretty much plan to fail. When you are asked to go for an interview, you've applied for a role, you already know the kind of company that you're applying for, hopefully. By the end of this preparation phase, you should know that company like the back of your hand. You need to immerse yourself into as if the fact that you work already at that company. And that's for two reasons. One, if you know the company, the industry really, really well, then when you actually get into that interview, you're going to be really comfortable with answering any question they throw at you. Doesn't matter what angle it comes from, that you're going to have some really solid knowledge about the company that you're applying for. So you can probably pick and cherry pick the information that you have in your brain to be able to answer questions about the company and the industry. But the second part is, we come back to that impression part. A hiring manager is going to be really impressed and notice if you are bringing up things that only someone would know if they already worked at the company. You've immersed yourself in it so much, you're so invested and interested in this role that you have spent the time, your personal time, out of hours, out of study, out of work, to find out everything there is to know about that company and about the person that you're speaking to. It is vital. I have done hundreds of interviews in my last 10 years, and every single interview I go for, even if I'm not particularly crash hot on the role, I will know everything there is to possibly find out about that company so that I actually feel like I am there adding value and I'm not wasting that company's time, right? So let's take a look at what some of that information is. So you've got an interview at, hypothetically, InternMatch. You need to understand a lot of things about that company, from what we do to the industry that we're operating in, who our competitors are, and the people that you're actually speaking to. So the kind of information you're going to look for is, what does the company actually do? You might have an idea of what you think the company you've applied for is. Make sure you've got that really crystal clear. How long have they been around? That sort of history is really vital, because when it comes to your role and the answers that you give for your role, is it a legacy company? Have they been around for 50 years and they pretty much already know what they're doing? Or are they a startup and they've been around for 3 years and they're still figuring it out, and you can contribute a lot to them figuring it out? What are their key products and services? What do you think is their best seller? What's the thing they're best known for? And finally, who might their competitors be? Who else in the industry are they up against? And who can you bring into your conversations when you're answering questions to show that you understand how to already hit the ground running? Who do they need to take out? Who do they need to compete with? Who are they running up against? Let's switch over to the right, to the industry. Understanding the industry is as vital as understanding the company, because there's so much more breadth to your role in a company than just what they do. And being able to keep your finger on the pulse and understanding the triggers, the strengths that you have in the industry, the weaknesses, threats to the industry, things that are big changes, big movements in the industry, you are already showing that you are qualified to be able to jump in there and start adding value. I'm going to show you where to get this information in a second, but these are the sort of questions I want you to be delving and kind of getting answers to. Put them into a Word document and start punching out some notes to these answers as you're finding it online. And then we come to the hiring manager and the role. So when you go for an interview, the hiring manager should say to you who is going to be in the interview. And if they don't, you're allowed to ask. It might be one person, it could be two, it could be three. Find out exactly who those people are, remember their names, what are their roles at the company, And even go a little bit further, what are their expertise and experience within the company? If you are interviewing with one person, it is just going to be you and them having this conversation, right? So it's a really nice idea that if you were interviewing with me, to jump onto my LinkedIn, find out a bit about me. What kind of content do I post? What kind of things have I studied in? What am I interested in? What are the little gems that you can make small talk about that you know that I'm going to be able to pick up and go, oh, we have common interest. That is going to, again, look really impressive to a hiring manager. And finally, what is the role that you're interviewing for? Remember that job description and that position description, if you have one, off by heart. What are the kind of things they're going to ask you? They should be woven throughout the responsibilities in the job ad. That's the secret. The questions are generally in the actual application. If you are applying for a role in social media and it says that you need to have an understanding of TikTok and Facebook in the job ad, then there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be asked a question about TikTok and Facebook in the actual interview. So look for the secret gems throughout that role description. What are the main responsibilities? Where do your strengths align? And are there potential weaknesses that you won't be able to address? And how are you going to find answers to those questions when you're in the interview? So if there's a point around that you don't quite understand TikTok, can you jump on and do a really quick 15-minute understanding? Can you gain some insight? Can you download the app? Can you make sure that you do fill those gaps where possible? Do you see how broad this information needs to be? But as you're doing this, you're actually preparing yourself across many different facets as you go. So these are the things I want you to research, but where are you going to find the information? This is all online. You're going to be able to go to their website and find out a plethora of things about the company. Their about page is going to have pretty much anything and everything about the history of the company. Their social media pages are going to have the most relevant information though. It's going to be new, it's going to be up to date, and it's going to be a little bit more candid than their website. So jump onto their LinkedIn. They should have a life page on their LinkedIn. They might have information about their staff and the kind of things they do in their company on their Instagram. Jump in there. Just do a broad Google search. Search the industry, search trends in the industry. Look at media articles. Like if you are jumping into an industry that has had a lot of change in the last 12 months, have they been impacted by COVID? What are the trends you're kind of seeing coming out of that industry because of big world events, life events, things happening? And then finally, you might jump in and actually look into information on that company's like newsletters, things, blog articles, things that they distribute on their owned media, owned information. There is a plethora out there. You shouldn't be short of information. You better find it, but make sure you do the research. It is key. Someone will generally ask, and we'll come to this, one of the first questions will be, particularly when you're a junior in a role, is what do you know about our company? And the answer should never be not much. You should be able to roll off a huge array of things you know about the company that are quite interesting and different. The second part of preparation is your personal pitch. So again, not just when you're a junior, but really for any interview, interviews are just a conversation. It's just someone getting to know whether they like working with that other person. Do they get along? Do they have similar interests? Can they imagine working with them? And a great hiring manager will often pop in as the first bit a question that's a really easy icebreaker for you to make you comfortable, to make you ease into the interview setting, and to kind of kick things off so that they can also get their head around the interview. They could be shuffling papers, getting themselves organized. Your hiring manager might have come through a billion meetings that day and then jumped into your interview. So your personal pitch, the tell us about yourself or tell us what you do, is vital for just kicking you off. And often I want you to remember that this is just to get you eased into the interview. It's to calm your nerves. So there's a really easy way for you to nail this pitch. It's still a really important question because you're kicking off. So whilst they know you're going to have interview nerves, they still are looking for little gems that show that you are comfortable and confident and that you have the right answers. So it just needs to be about 15 seconds long. It's defining who you are, what you do, and why you're there, right? And I'm going to get you to use something like this to develop your personal pitch. Really brief. You're going to start by sharing your name because you could have multiple interviewers in your interview, and one might have been brought in last minute and they might not have quite grabbed your name. So always repeat your name. It's also great for double checking pronunciation for them. They can retain it once again. So share what your name is. Share what you're studying or where you've been studying or what you've just graduated in, where you work and what you do if you're working. If you've just done an internship or some work experience, bring that in and say it with enthusiasm and positivity and really own your narrative. And finally, you're going to mention your goals, the things you want to achieve in your career now. Why are you there? Why are you sitting in this interview? And then a little gem you can add on if you're comfortable and you have time is some things about you that are not related to the job. Let me show you what that looks like. An example of this, oh no, it's getting cut off. I will read it to you anyway, and I can tell you what the last bit says. For a student who's just got out of university or still in university, your personal pitch is going to be very different to someone like me who's been working for 10 years and has a lot more breadth to what I can add. Your personal pitch is going to sound something like this. Here's an example. I'm Namita. I'm a student at La Trobe University and I'm studying my master's in marketing. I'm preparing to graduate at the end of this year. I've recently completed an internship with a fantastic local marketing agency based in Collingwood. You're giving them little gems of things that they can relate to. I might live in Collingwood. I might work at a marketing agency. Bring things in that make sense. And I'm really looking forward to joining the workforce in a full-time capacity. So what's your intention of being there? My passion is digital marketing and social media advertising, and I spend my time immersed in social media, upskilling and teaching myself everything I need to know. If you don't have a great deal of experience, showing that you're going to every end and breadth to be able to do what you can to get those things ticked off is vital. So you're saying your passion is in digital marketing, social media, and you're spending time adding extra value. You're showing them that you're going to add extra value to what they're doing every day, right? That you are a self-starter, that you can do the thing, and the fact that you're a student hasn't prohibited you from joining and making your life really value added and your career really impactful already. And finally, you're going to add in that little bit that's about a bit more personal and some things they can grab onto and they might bring back into the conversation at the end when it's a bit more casual and relaxed. Outside of marketing, I'm a qualified Pilates instructor and I love music and going to gigs. That's all it needs to be. Who you are, what you do, how you're doing it. If you have a role that's like quite active at the moment, then you might talk more about that role. And then finally, some little gems into who you are as a person. Who are they going to talk to at the tea room every week when you come in? This sort of stuff, right? So have a think about what your personal pitch is and practice it and practice it and practice it and start that now. This bit should be the easiest part to get because if you are in an interview and your first question, 99% of the time is going to be tell us about yourself, and you don't quite kick that off on the right foot and you feel like you're not comfortable and you feel like you've buggered it up, you're not going to have a great run for the rest of it potentially. So nail this section so that you go into the next question feeling confident, feeling ready, you've grabbed their attention, and you know this stuff. This stuff is about you, so you're ready to rock and roll. Let's chat a bit about answering interview questions. So there are too many interview questions to prepare for to be able to answer them all today. But the great thing is that they all have little similarities that you can bring back into each question. You can't physically prepare to answer all of them, but you can try and nail around 5 to 6 that are broad enough that you can retrofit to other questions. Some of those might be things like, what made you apply for this role? That should be quite innate for you because it should be related to your study, to your experience, to your future goals. What interests you about the role or the industry that you've studied for? So if you are asking for a role in marketing, what interests you about marketing? What interests you about engineering? Why did you study engineering? The basic kind of high-end starting point. They want to understand what makes you sing, what makes you hum when you come to work. Tell us about your time at a previous employer or a previous internship or something on your resume. Tell us about your time there. What did you do? What did you tackle? What's some major achievements and responsibilities? What interests you about the company you're applying for? We went through this earlier. You have all the questions you need to identify about that. If perhaps that company's a startup, maybe you'll say, I love the startup space. I like that it's fresh and innovative and you guys are making things up as you go, which means that I can contribute a lot and I can bring new ideas to the table and be a part of the growth. Maybe it's that they are helping a small community group or they're doing work in the non-profit sector and that's something you're really passionate about. Find the thing that is your why. That's not going to be a generic answer that everybody else is going to give. What interests you about this company? Some of your greatest strengths, what are the things that you bring to the table? You need to nail this one, and you also need to nail what are some of your weaknesses. What's something that your previous manager or a peer, your friends and family might say you could do with some extra work on? The answer is never nothing. We all have things to work on, and it's really great if you can take something out of the role and be able to make it a little bit sharpened to show that you perhaps don't have the TikTok experience, but you learn Instagram in 2 weeks, you're fully nailing it and you're having great success there. So you've already downloaded the app and you're ready to start immersing into that. It shows that you, whilst you may not have the experience in it, you're ready to crack on with it and actually learn about that thing. So it's okay to have weaknesses. They want to see your vulnerabilities. They want to see how you're going to tackle those weaknesses though. What do you hope to gain from this role? What are the things you want to gain in the next 6 months to a year, the experience, the skills you want to obtain from it? And another one that's really commonly asked is, how would your peers describe you? How would a previous manager describe you, your friends and family? That can be really positive. It should be really positive things. And it may be what you bring to a team or an environment that's really vital. Are you really high energy? Are you really empathetic and you can understand how people work and you're really great at getting conversation out of people, and therefore you're going to work really well with customers because you know what makes them tick, you know how to get the right ideas out of them. So try and hone in on 5 to 6 questions and really nail your answers to those and practice and practice and practice them, so that you feel like you have things you can pull on your brain to answer other questions. If you want to delve into some more, if you want to try some harder questions, some more curly ones, LinkedIn Learning has some great tools on there. There's some ones you can access for free in that top QR code that are expert tips for answering common questions. And if you have premium access, you can answer some common interview questions, and there's some sample answers there as well. So jump on in and scan those now. I'll give you a second to do that so that you can have some really great resources to try and think about what those questions might be, or screenshot this slide here and start practicing, gang. So how do you actually answer those questions? This is the golden question, right? Because so much of your interview time is an actual set answer question scenario. 99% of the time, an interviewer is going to expect that you are answering your interview questions with the STAR method, this method here. It's a really nice common sense way of breaking down questions and answers. And not only is it nice for the company to hear it this way, it will help your brain keep on track. So when you are in the middle of answering a question, I want you to pull yourself back to this STAR method and make sure you've ticked off these things. Set the situation. Look, I'm going to give you a live example in a second. The first thing you're going to do is set the situation. What are you talking about? Where was it? What happened? What role? What company? So let's set the scene. T is for describing the task. What was the task and your involvement in it? What did you have to do? Were you part of a team? Were you on your own? Why are you part of this interview question response? A is for action. How did you actually take action, provide a solution to the problem? There should always be a problem in these interview questions. What did you do that was the great thing that resulted in an action? And finally, what was the results of that? How did you turn things around? What was the return on investment? What was the result? What was the team impact? What was the results of the situation that you've set here? So let's look at this in an example. So here is an example, the question being, tell us about a time you used a problem-solving attitude. Not a hard question, a really common question, and it might be asked in a few different ways like this, but generally this is going to be the question around problem solving. Tell us about a time you used problem solving. Answer might be something like this. So let's set the scene. Whilst I was interning at InternMatch, X company, wherever, we were very understaffed due to COVID, and we had a critical project that needed to be finalised. You might give a bit more information on that project. Perhaps you say a critical project on delivering a new program to a new government initiative that we needed to be finalised. You now come into the T section, the task. In order to help my manager achieve the deadline, so that's showing great teamwork, I volunteered to assist with this project in addition to my own regular work with no leniency on the deadline. So you're saying here that you're great at teamwork, you put your hand up, which is really proactive, and you can multitask, you were still doing your own work. We love this answer. Then we come to the action. To meet the project deadline and to help the manager, I developed and automated a vital process by using software programs like Excel to complete tasks that would have usually been undertaken by staff members. What's great about this action is that it shows that you understand, one, how to use technology to help your role, and how you know how to automate things to give you back time and give your team back time. This answer is lovely because it doesn't just talk about you, it talks about your wider team. And then finally, what was the result of that? This resulted in not only the project being delivered on time, fantastic, but the automation I developed is now part of the regular process, saving time and resources on a daily basis. So let's look at this question answer again as one. Tell us about a time you used a problem-solving attitude. Whilst I was interning at X company, we were very understaffed due to COVID and we had a critical project that needed to be finalised. In order to help my manager achieve the deadline, I volunteered to assist with the project in addition to my own regular work with no leniency on the deadline. What did you do? To meet the project deadline, I developed an automated vital process by using softwares like Excel to complete tasks that would have usually been undertaken by staff members. This resulted in not only the project being delivered on time, but the automation I delivered is now part of a regular process, saving time and resources on a daily basis. It's not a long answer. It's clear, it's concise, it brings in the right information. And what this method stops us from doing, and I'm a great culprit for this, it stops us waffling. It stops us adding in fluff information, doing ums and ahs, and bringing in things that don't need to be in there. When you start to go off on a tangent, you lose people's attention. If you can stick to the STAR method and think there's 4 things I need to do in this answer: scene, task, action, result, then you're going to have a much better outcome with the answers that you're giving. So practice the STAR method for me as well. Short, sharp, concise, and to the point. If the manager has more questions, they will ask more questions from that answer. Okay, now we're going for time, part 2. So you've got your preparation done. You've got your pitch nailed. You've researched the company, you know who you're talking to. Let's now get to the day of the interview. We're going to talk about presenting yourself, your body language, where are you going, what are you doing, who are you meeting, and then some pre-interview rituals that are really vital for getting you in the zone. So it goes without saying that, and I'm sure most of you will be all across this, but let's just reiterate it quickly. When you look your best, you will feel your best. And when you feel your best, you will present better. If you feel uncomfortable, you're probably not going to bring your best self forward. So it goes without saying that in an interview, regardless of whether it's in person or on Zoom, you need to look and feel your best. You need to be presenting clean, polished, put together. People want to understand the kind of person that's going to walk into their business every day and make sure that they can put them in front of clients, stakeholders, and other staff members. If you're not sure about the dress code, you can always ask your hiring manager what to wear, what is the dress code for the interview. And if you don't get an answer that you're looking for, always in doubt, wear a tailored look. Business appropriate, corporate attire, the kind of things you would wear to a corporate role anyway. Even when you're going to roles that are like a startup where you think they're probably dressing quite casual, you just don't know how relaxed that dress code can be. So it's always better to be overdressed and underdressed for these situations. As I said, even if it's online, put a clean shirt on, do your hair, get yourself well presented, clean your screen, make sure your Zoom camera is clean, no smudges on the camera, lens, and get yourself ready to go. And it's, as I said, it's much more about than just the clothes you're wearing. It's your grooming, it's how your hair's done. I use my hands a lot when I speak, as you can probably notice. So I constantly have my nails done because I know that people are going to be looking at them because they're front and center when I'm talking to you. So things like that are really important as well. So have a think about this stuff, not even just on the day, maybe prepare this day before. We'll go through this in rituals in a second. Body language. Okay, so you're in your interview, you've got the questions all up here, you're ready to go, you're a little bit nervous, that's totally fine. Nerves are normal and important. They get you in the zone, they get our brain and our body in the go action zone, so that's completely fine. But something to really keep in mind of that kind of goes out the window when we're nervous is how our body is projecting how we feel. So it's really important when you're on, again, whether you're on Zoom or whether you're in person, how's your posture? Are you sitting up straight? Are you comfortable? You should look relaxed, but you should be sitting up straight, head up high, shoulders back. But you don't want to look uncomfortable and stiff. You're just sitting in a really nice, relaxed position. We're not slouched down in the chair. We're not hiding under the table. You also need to be conscious of your body language when it comes to things like arms and legs being crossed. Are you open? Or you closed off with your body language? Stuff like this, as we all know, my camera a bit, is very closed off. Even on a Zoom, it looks like I'm not interested to be here. If I'm laying back on my chair, I'm swinging on my chair. It's awful, isn't it? You need someone sitting straight, eyes down the camera, or eyes on the people that you are speaking to in the interview. Hands are open and your body language is open. And that even goes for your legs. It's okay to cross your legs, but be conscious of the way your body is turning towards. If you're crossing your legs and you're facing interviewers, make sure that you're facing onto the interviewers and not turning away and looking disinterested. Do you see how all these things make a huge difference? And again, things like speaking with your hands, there's a limit to it. I could definitely overdo it as I'm doing now, but there's a definite art to talking with your hands to show enthusiasm, thoughtful nodding when you're being asked questions or answering questions to show that you understand what is happening. And even little things like head tilts show that you are engaging, you're listening, you're interested. You probably do this stuff already subconsciously, but when we are nervous, we shut down and we close up like this. So we want to avoid this. And if you find yourself feeling really stiff in the interview, take a deep breath, relax, unlock your arms, relax your shoulders, and just ease back into it. You have potentially either half an hour to an hour in an interview to be able to rebuild that up if you've started off a little bit stiff. And last thing for the last or second last thing for who, what, where of the interview, These things sound really simple, but if you don't have them locked and loaded, they will frazzle you and you will be going into that interview like a hot mess, which if you spend time preparing, that's a real disappointment. What date and time is your interview? Double check, triple check. Have you got the time right? If it's an interview that's like interstate, is there a time zone difference? Make sure you're turning up and showing up at the right date, at the right time. Where is the interview taking place? Is it on Zoom? Is it on Teams? Have you downloaded the right programs already? If it's in person, what's the location? How do you get there? How long do you need to allocate to get there? What's the public transport like? Are you going to need to run? Are you going to be sweaty? Is it like today it's a 36-degree day and you're going to be in a suit? Think about all these things first. Do you have a quiet space that you can sit for a minute and gather yourself before you walk into that meeting? If you are cutting your interview fine, you're going to come in from back to back and you're running in there and you're probably feeling a little bit sweaty and a little bit disheveled. If you have time, can you set yourself the luxury of giving yourself an extra half an hour to sit and have a tea at a cafe nearby, or go through your notes, or just find a minute to have some peace and quiet, either on your travel time or prior? And then again, like we said, what's the interview format? Who are you meeting with and what are their names? Who are you asking for at the front desk? And as I said, little pre-interview rituals can make all the difference when getting ready. It sounds like all this stuff's a lot, right? But it's actually not. You do all these things already. It's just making sure that you're making enough time and effort, because you're going into an interview. You've probably spent time doing your CV and your LinkedIn and applying for it. It would be a damn shame if you've been asked to go for an interview in a time when the market is very hot and there's a lot of people applying for roles, and you haven't quite prepared enough and you feel like you didn't give it your best. We want to avoid that because it's an awful feeling. So what are you going to do the night before? It's really important to get a good night's rest. I know it sounds simple, but we are all so terrible at getting consistent, good enough hours of sleep. And your brain absolutely is going to need that going into an interview, because you are on high alert. You have got a lot of new information. You've got new faces, new people, new environment. Our nervous system doesn't love that. So let's make sure we're well slept so that we can be as much of a sponge and absorb things as much as we need. Pop your outfit out before the night before. Press it, wash it, have it ready to go. Does it have any stains on it? Does it need to be ironed? Have it ready to rock and roll. The morning of, even if your interview is later in the afternoon, wake up early, get some sunlight. We know science tells us that first thing in the morning, we need to get sunlight into our eyes, not artificial light, natural light. It wakes us up, it gets the brain firing, and you're going to have yourself in good strides to be able to retain the information that you need to regurgitate for that interview to that hiring manager. Go for a walk, get some exercise into you, have a healthy and nutritious breakfast, get some food into your body, and start that energy firing. And then, as I said, right before the interview, regardless of whether it's in person or remote, allow yourself some silent time, some time to reflect, to look at your notes, to have a deep breath, and just calm your nerves. Before every interview, even a lot of presentations I do, right before I press the go button, I just sit and I have a little meditation. I might put on a song and I just give myself 3 minutes of breathing. That's all I need. And then I'm ready to go. So make sure you have the space to be able to do that if you need to do that. Okie doke. Post interview, hypothetically, you've prepped, you've dressed, you're ready, you've gone, you've interviewed, you've smashed the interview questions, you're feeling good, you come out the other side. Or maybe you're not feeling great. Maybe you didn't think you went particularly well. Either way, we have to then do the right process on the other side for yourself and for the company. So after the interview, one of the most important things you need to do, and we don't do this enough, and I really beg you to do this, have some time for reflection. Not every interview is going to end with a yes. And you're going to do a lot of interviews throughout your career. So regardless of how the interview goes, it's always great for personal development to stop and reflect afterwards. How do you think it went? How did the interview feel? Did you do well? If not, what are the reasons that perhaps it didn't go so great? What questions do you need to work on in the future? What questions did you love answering? What things lit a fire up inside of you that you were really passionate about, that you went, oh, I loved answering that bit? Because there's probably some real gems in that information. Like if you found that you loved answering X, Y, and Z, do you need to apply for roles that are more in line with that? If the bits that made you really uncomfortable are 99% of the role, perhaps not the right role for you. So look through that information, dig deep, look into the soul a little bit and see how that feels. And then another good thing to do here is to also chat to somebody else about it. So if you don't, I think I want this on the next slide here. If you don't have like a mentor or somebody that you can look up to who understands the roles you're applying for quite well, a family member or a friend or a peer or someone from uni is a really great person to sit back with and actually have a chat to them about it. Ask some questions, just debrief on them. It's really vital for our brains and our psychology to have that time to reflect and download. So find a person and say, can I just give you a bit of a download on how my interview went? And they'll go, no problem. They might have some advice for you as well. And then finally, following up. So that's a really great question we always get, is that should I follow up with a hiring manager or a company after an interview? The answer is you totally can. So something to consider is that hiring processes can be really lengthy. I even know with my teams, it can be a really arduous process, interviewing lots of people, potentially lots of roles with personal interests and people working hybrid or remote or whatever they're doing. Sometimes a hiring process can be a really long months and months worth of time between applying and the job actually having a result. So don't be surprised if it takes a little while for you to hear back for next steps, but I understand it can be really tedious to sit through that. So when you're in the interview, at the end of the interview, ask the hiring manager about timeframes and next steps. I don't really say, do you have any questions? You will always have some questions. I want you guys to think of some questions to ask back at the end of the interview. It's vital that you show interest and have some things that you have thought about throughout the interview. And one of those questions can be, what are the next steps for this process and the timeframes you guys think this will take? It gives you a bit of a time that you can kind of go, okay, I'll have my expectations set there. You know what to expect if they go to round 2 or 3 or whatever the process is. And it means that you can set a line in the sand to say, if I don't hear back from a hiring manager from this date, you can email them or call them to say, hey, just wondering how my interview went and some results of the interview. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon for you to not hear back from hiring managers. Some HR teams are fantastic, some are not. And often you will not actually hear back from the people that you have interviewed with, which is a real shame. So definitely follow up and kind of say, hey, I'd love some feedback on how I went in my interview for XYZ role. Okie doke, we are right on time, which I love. Some final tips and tricks from our team here at InternMatch, which I love. And these are some really vital ones. And this one from Nat is a real killer and something you guys should definitely consider when going into your interview. So your interview starts from the minute you walk in the door. You do not know who is in the lift with you, at reception, in the foyer, the person that might meet you when you're walking into your interview room. They could be really vital in the process of hiring you. So as Nat says, smile as soon as you walk in the door, engage with the receptionist, start conversations with someone in the lift or foyer. You never know who they are and how much influence they have. From our CEO, Jared, he says, make a list of 5 to 6 things that you have done in the past that could be applied as a scenario for literally any questions that are asked. This is a fabulous tip, and this is something we've spoken about with the interview questions I want you to practice and go through. What are some answers that you can just kind of give to any of those questions? What are some great experiences, some responsibilities, some key things you've done throughout your role that you can use as answers to those questions? And one from me, finally. Okay, so your heart is racing, your mouth is dry. Remember to breathe. As I said, Take pauses between your sentences to give your brain a chance to catch up to your mouth. Even I forget to do this. I forget to do it in webinars. And don't be afraid to ask for a glass of water throughout the interview or before the interview begins. Again, some HR teams are fantastic and they will bring these things into the interviews. Some are not, some are busy. So it's a great chance when you sit down to say, would you mind if I grabbed a glass of water? And they'll go, oh my goodness, of course, yes. And I'll jump out and grab one. Strongly recommend you do this because an hour of nerves can make your mouth very, very dry and can make answering interview questions very tricky. Finally, guys, I want you to remember it is okay to be nervous. As hiring managers, we understand it. Sometimes even your hiring managers are nervous. But I want you to remember at the end of the day, people like working with people they like. So it's a conversation. They are just looking for some common ground that you get along with somebody and that also you understand the job that you are applying for and you have the skills necessary to be able to take it to the next step. Skills can be taught, attitude is vital, and the fact that you get along with that person is really key. So go on with the right attitude and just remember you're having a chat. That's all it is. And take it from there. Before we get into Q&A, I want to go through those top tips really quick and then invite you guys to a special workshop we are hosting. Know your company and the person that you are interviewing with for this role. Nail your personal pitch. Use that STAR method for answering all your questions or as close to the STAR method as you can. Look your best so that you feel your best throughout the interview. And remember that body language speaks louder than words. They're going to notice if you are closed up and feeling uncomfortable, and make it conversational. You're making an impression. You're just a person having a chat. Before we kick off into Q&A, so start punching those questions into the Q&A box for me, guys. I do want to invite you to the step before an interview. If you haven't quite yet got to interview phase, we do have a resume writing workshop on the 16th of February on the afternoon, 5:30 p.m. It is very limited tickets we have available to you guys, and we are going to be presenting to you exactly how to do your resume. Bring your laptop in, bring in your resume or a Word doc. We have templates to give you, and let's start finessing your resume so that it is so sensational that you do get to the interview phase. So jump on. I strongly recommend that you register for this. We already have sold a lot of the tickets. We're halfway through and we've still got a month to go. So jump on, register for this. We'll give you some light supper as well while we're there. And the team will be there for one-on-ones to be able to take you through your resume throughout the session as well. So scan that QR code and come along and join us. And finally, you will be sent a survey after this session, gang. Check your emails this afternoon. We are giving away a voucher to Fabulous Comedy Republic, which is in the CBD here in Melbourne, unreal comedy show that has opened the last couple of years. So if you'd like to go along to that, complete the very quick survey. I think it's like 4 questions. It'll take you literally 15 seconds. Let us know what you think of this session, and we will be drawing to see who goes in the draw to win the Comedy Republic voucher. Okie doke. Let's see questions and answers, how you guys are feeling about things. I'm just going to open this up now and see some questions there. Salman, hello, thank you so much for your question. What are the red flags and common mistakes that candidates make during the interview process, and how can I avoid them? Big question, but really great question. Look, I don't think there are ever red flags. Red flags is like a dangerous, dirty words. We won't call them red flags, but it is okay and normal to make mistakes throughout interviews. And the thing is, I want you to remember here is, like I said, it is just a conversation, right? So if you keep that at the front of your mind, that it's a conversation, breathe throughout it. And if you can remember those few things that you can draw on for experience, that you can use as examples, then it's going to avoid you making these mistakes. I think the thing that stands out the most in an interview is when, and this is the number one thing, this is something I stumble on as well, is when you get a little bit stumbled or caught off guard by a question. You might get a question and you go, and your initial response to go, ooh, I don't know, and to and ah. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So it's okay when you get asked a question to pause, stop, have a breath, and have a think about the question. You can ask for the question to be asked in a different way. And then rack through your brain of those key things that you know you have done really well throughout your early career in studying that you can draw on. It may not even be that the answer perfectly retrofits to that answer. Sorry, the answer you're giving perfectly retrofits to that question. But if the interviewer can see that you are calm, you are doing your best to apply an answer and an example to that question, and you're taking the key parts out of the question, whether it's problem solving or a weakness or how would you approach this, then they're going to still give you points for being able to articulate a well-worded answer. Overwhelm sticks out a lot. And I think when you get to that point where you get so overwhelmed with the question, you can't quite come up with an answer, what tends to happen, and is a common mistake that I have seen, is that it tends to derail the rest of the interview in the sense that the candidate is then no longer comfortable answering the remaining questions, which is only tricky because although we know that nerves are completely fine, we understand that we still are looking for answers to questions so that we have some skills to be able to associate to the role that you're applying for. So pause, breathe, think about the things that you already know, and use that method of like problem, solution, and what was your involvement. And in essence, that's the STAR method: problem, solution, your role, and the result of that. Then just keep pushing through, and they might re-ask the question in a different way if they don't quite have the answer they want, or they'll move on to a new question. So just trying to keep yourself going throughout the interview is the most important thing. Keeping calm and just keep rolling on. Any other questions, gang? Does that answer your question, Salman? Is there anything else you'd like to ask from that that I can answer? We expect fast talking, we expect nerves, we expect a bit of dry mouth and sweat. That stuff's totally okay. But we are looking for correct answers to questions or an ability to adapt to those questions. I think while I'm on that, I'll just say another common trigger that stands out is if you have oversold yourself drastically on your resume and CV, and that is very obvious when we come to questions and answers. If a candidate has no example of a situation, and every question is going to look for an example, a real life example. If you don't have a real life example that you've perhaps oversold, that you know how to do that on your resume, then that's going to stand out as well. So be really comfortable with the role that you're applying for, that you can answer questions that relate to that role. Anything else, team? Pop it into the chat, pop it into the Q&A. If not, I can't quite see my chat. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see the chat there. If there are no more questions, I will leave you guys to it. Come along to our session for CV writing. I strongly recommend jump over to the Career Catalyst website. There's heaps of resources on there. And if you need some more help with interviewing preparation and practicing, we have our career coaching sessions that you guys can sign up for, and you can speak to someone from InternMatch Lifetime and go through some questions and answers with them as well. A great person to vet this against. So thank you very much, team, for coming along to another webinar with us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next events and webinars. See you later. Bye.